So I see this article over here at Silver Doctors. Of course, the doominess of the title catches my eye like a beautiful Florida sunset, and made me want to do a video about it. And here I am. The U.S. system is going to move into the next phase of collapse under Trump's watch. I gotta tell you something, though, and I've said this a bunch of times. I think you already know. It does not matter who the president is at this point in time in the year 2017. Whoever he or she is, you could write that same article headline and it will be completely relevant. It is not the president's issue or problem or cause of the issue. He or she happened to be in the wrong position at the wrong time. All the horrible decisions before them are now coming home to roost on their watch. And there's nothing they can do about it, just like there was nothing Barack Obama could do about it, and he had no choice but to let Congress and then sign off on the bills to just keep increasing the debt load and increasing and bailouts, yes, and this and TARP fund, yep, we are gonna sign it all basically. My nose itching, stand by. Okay, so let's see what we got here. It's kind of a lengthy one. When the downturn arrives on the doorstep and in the pocketbooks of the average American, the leftists in most of the world will be blaming Trump as an incompetent buffoon or a vitriolic fascist. The real purpose behind the Russian Trump conspiracy propaganda. Just after the U.S. presidential election in 2016, and this is a guy the guy who did this is Brandon Smith of alt-market.com. So right after the election, I published an article titled "Order Out of Chaos: Defeat of the Left Comes with a Cost," covering a rather difficult subject matter, namely the concept of fourth-generation warfare and how it is used by establishment elitists to defeat popular resistance to their agenda of centralization and globalization. Fourth-gen tactics are confusing to many people, confusing to many, but most people think in terms of single movements and direct correlations. They think that a punch thrown is a punch intended to strike, rather than intended as a feint or misdirection. I'll put it another way. Some people play chess and they only, or as one of my kids' friends, Nikki, used to say, do you want to play chess? Nicole, do you want to play chess? No, Nikki, honey, it's chess. Chess, do you want to play chess? Cute, isn't it? I'll pull it another way. Some people play chess or chest, and they only see the attack in front of them. Others play chess, and they see the attack 3 moves ahead. Fourth-gen warfare is a 3 steps ahead style of fighting that focuses on a very specific goal, tricking the enemy into destroying himself or enslaving himself so that you don't have to take any risks by moving against him directly. That is to say, fourth-gen warfare is first and foremost about psychology. That which you see with your eyes is usually not what is actually happening. For example, when predicting the election win of Donald Trump and the passage of Brexit, I based my conclusions on a fourth-gen strategy. According to the behavior and rhetoric of globalists and their organizations at the time, it seemed to me that they were allowing sovereignty and conservative movements to gain a foothold in the political arena. They were letting us think that we were winning. This accomplishes a few things. It takes conservatives off their guard and convinces them to think in terms of defending government rather than overthrowing government. The corruption has not changed, but now we have a vested interest in keeping the system going and attempting to change it from the inside. I hope it is clear to the majority of liberty activists today that this is a naive notion. Conservatives are also now willing to argue in favor of the election system, because many of them think that because Donald Trump won, the system must be at least partially legitimate. Newsflash, our election system has been fraudulent for decades. The only candidates that ever make it past the DNC and RNC filters are the candidates the elites want the public to choose from. The American people are also now viciously divided over Trump's ascendance to the White House. The political left has been driven to the point of utter insanity. Not that they weren't already stark raving mad to begin with. Conservatives are next to be targeted with psychological manipulation, as the leftist zealotry pushes us towards the other end of the spectrum in a potentially dangerous mindset of rationalizing a totalitarian response, where extreme social divisions exist. Civil unrest and war are not far behind. Finally, the existing economic and social framework of the U.S. in particular has a finite lifespan. Economic instability is rampant, as I noted and evidenced in last week's article, and this has been a process ongoing since the initial 2008 credit and derivatives crisis. The old structure of America is being deliberately torn down to make way for a new structure, a single global edifice in which we are not a nation but a feudal vassal with no ideas of sovereign self-determination. That said, the old world cannot be torn down outright. The globalists do not plan to take any blame for the crisis that would inevitably follow. Enter Trump, the perfect scapegoat for the next stage of fiscal collapse, and perhaps a Pied Piper convincing enough to lure numerous conservative groups into taking the blame as well. Trump, a seeming enemy of the globalist agenda, takes office, then surrounds himself with the same bankers and globalists he admonished during his campaign. He continues his anti-globalist rhetoric, but his actions tend to help them. Conservatives, desperate for a hero on a white horse to ride in and stop the rushing tide of cultural Marxism, were given one, just not in the manner they were hoping for. In the meantime, the establishment has sought to keep social tensions high. How? The political left has been played like a marionette since the election with a narrative of Russian conspiracy. You see, hatred is psychologically exhausting. Mobs tend to dissipate and become impotent over time. It is hard to sustain the hatred of a large mass of people without consistent propaganda. Thus, it is important to give people a reason to hate, a reason that fuels perpetual reinforcement. For leftists, the desire to hate Trump runs deep. They think he represents everything that stands in opposition to their ideology, and zealots cannot tolerate the existence of opposing ideals. But there has to be more. The left has to be convinced that Trump is a thief so heinous that he stole an election with the help of a foreign power. Not only is Trump the Antichrist to leftists, he is also a false president, a pretender to the throne. This narrative is more than enough to keep the left frothing at the mouth for months, if not years. As many analysts have pointed out, there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Trump stole the election, let alone colluded with the Russian government to steal the election. Of course, as you all know now, according to the guy on CNN who didn't know he was being recorded, yeah, we made that whole story up. No Russian nonsense. Former FBI Director James Comey's recent testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee produced nothing. No memos, no paper trail, zip, zilch. The very existence of the Comey memos is likely a farce, or should I say, another farce of many farces previously. But here is where I break with many in the liberty movement. Some analysts assume that Trump is being targeted and that the goal is to remove him from the White House. This makes little sense to me. If the elites wanted to stop Trump, they would have done it during the RNC selection process, just as they did to Ron Paul, and just as the DNC did to Bernie Sanders. Clearly, Trump is more valuable to them sitting in the Oval Office, as I have outlined. The Russian circus is going nowhere because it never was meant to go anywhere. It is distraction and drama, a soap opera for the ignorant masses. Trump will not be removed from office. If he does end up impeached, the impeachment will fail. As I have said since before the election, the establishment needs Trump as president. So if I am correct, and the Russian conspiracy narrative is not intended to take Trump down, what is it intended for? As stated earlier, this is fourth-generation warfare, and the intended target for propaganda is not always the obvious target. As noted, the leftists are the initial target. They will continue to believe that Trump is a Russian collaborator because they want to believe it. Regardless of how absurd the whole idea is, they will ignore the fact that there is no evidence to support the accusation. They will embrace the propaganda wholeheartedly and develop more violent methods to express their outrage. The secondary target of the Russian conspiracy manipulation is conservative groups. Here is the reality of our predicament. The U.S. system is going to move into the next phase of the collapse under Trump's watch. Period. The math is undeniable. Every economic indicator except stocks is in severe decline. The Federal Reserve is raising interest rates to deliberately ignite greater instability, and time is running out. I believe that this phase will begin before the end of 2017, when the next downturn arrives on the doorstep and in the pocketbooks of the average American. The leftists in most of the world will blame Trump as an incompetent buffoon or a vitriolic fascist. Just as the elites need to make Trump and conservatives the best possible scapegoat for the left, they also need a perfect scapegoat for the political right. The narrative will be turned against the leftists, and conservatives will explain that Trump was not able to reverse economic damages created by the Obama administration because leftists use the fake Russian conspiracy as a means to undermine him at every opportunity. Leftists will be labeled economic and political saboteurs. And this accusation will work to a point because it's partly true. And finally, as America's decline accelerates, Eastern nations will without a doubt decouple completely from the US dollar as the world reserve currency and begin using the IMF special drawing rights basket structure as a replacement. Russia will most likely lead this charge along with China. Americans will blame Russia in part for the demise of the dollar's buying power around the world, and the rest of the world will blame the U.S. for the dollar's demise due to U.S. imperialism and overt sanctions against Russia. They will say, "We had it coming." Perhaps you have noticed a particular pattern here. Every piece of the narrative I have outlined has already been initiated, if perhaps only in early to mid stages of development. This is an open dialogue common in the mainstream, and in every case, the offered culprit behind the downfall of America is always someone other than the banking elites. Anyone other than the banking elites. Leftists, and by the way, all these terror attacks and shooting, how come these bankers are never targeted? How come Wall Street's never targeted? How come the CFTC, the COMEX, the CME Group, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, why are these entities never targeted? Crazy ISIS guys only go after you and me at bus stations and, schools, but they don't go after the people who is easily available, easily known to be causing all the problems of the world. They don't want to target those guys. No, they want to target you and me. Nonsense. Leftists and socialists around the globe will blame Trump and conservative principles. Conservatives will blame the left and their obstructions of Trump. The West will blame the East. Globalists will blame populists and nationalists will be scrambling to protect their ground by any means necessary, including unconstitutional measures, which will only help the globalists in the long run. A core catalyst for the geopolitical game is the Trump presidency and the use of the Russian conspiracy to ensure that the left remains crazy, inspiring the right towards extreme measures. Again, this is not about removing Trump. It is about manipulating the left. It is about using the left's cultural Marxism to trigger an iron-fisted reaction from the political right. In my recent article, Operation Temporer, UK will likely institute martial law measures within a year, I warned readers that the UK government has already set in motion martial law measures in response to a growing number of Islamic terrorist attacks. In the US, I think the same march towards totalitarianism will occur, but for reasons beyond foreign terrorism. Economic uncertainty coupled with a volatile left hell-bent on supplanting the presidency by any means necessary may very well be exploited by Trump and the elites surrounding him to establish martial law measures in the U.S., and I have little doubt that a portion of conservatives will actually cheer this action. If this takes place and conservatives come out in majority support, then the globalists, their use of the fourth-gen warfare, will have succeeded. They will have won. For if conservatives abandon the Constitution, then no one will be left to defend the principles and heritage it represents. We will have destroyed ourselves, and the elites will have barely lifted a finger to make this happen. The game can be changed entirely, but only if we are smart enough to recognize the narrative for what it is, and only if we turn our sights on the globalists instead of hyper-focusing on the scapegoats they offer us. Now, I agree with a lot of what he said. I'm still not 100% sure, and I could get it wrong. I could. That Trump was for sure, the right side candidate that they really wanted, because everybody, including CNN, and CNN's basically the CIA, Clinton, even the CIA network or the Clinton News Network, whatever you want to call them, they would not be hell-bent on trying to get this guy out of office. I mean, they really wouldn't, in my opinion. So I don't know really that Trump was really picked, so to speak, but I don't know. But it was a very interesting article. He makes a lot of great points, and that's why I wanted to share it. Take care.